So thanks very much to Nikki for organizing this wonderful seminar around depression, and I'm going to be talking largely about depression and faith, and try and throw in something about art from a rather naive perspective. I wanted to start by saying something very briefly about myself, which perhaps gives a context to what I have to say. I am a psychologist. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been in practice for a long period of time, both as an academic and in practice. But I happen also to be a Christian my own Christian faith is quite important to me and impacts quite strongly on my understanding of depression. And for the last 15 or odd years, I've had very strong developing interests in Buddhism and in the Christian-Buddhist dialogue. And I must say that my own exposure to Buddhism has both deepened my Christian faith and helped my understanding of depression. And I will be drawing on some of those elements in talking this morning. So in starting, I want to put to you two considerations that are going to inform my talk, and talk about them very briefly and then go into talking about depression. The first is that as humans, we are multidimensional beings. And the second is that life involves a range of experiences. First, humans as multidimensional beings. I want to suggest to you that we all, human nature, human being as it is, consists of many different dimensions. We have a biological substrate to our life that influences many aspects, a psychological component. We constantly make sense of our lives. We create stories and narratives of our lives. There's a social dimension to our human nature. We have to be in relationship with other people to find support from other people. And the best evidence I can offer you for this is the absolute explosion of Facebook as a vehicle for making our lives work. But on top of this, we have what we might call a spiritual dimension to life. It seems to me there's different ways of understanding the spiritual dimension, but in my terms, it's about attempting to connect with the ultimate in our lives. It's what Paul Tillich, the theologian, called connecting with the ground of our being. Many people will articulate this as God in theistic terms, but of course, there are many non-theistic spiritually minded people who have other ways of articulating this connectedness with the ground of our being. And it seems to me that ultimately it's this dimension that can only really be expressed in art, in poetry, in literature, in philosophy, and in our own private dreams. It's difficult to capture in other ways. I think there's a danger of a reductionism. There's a danger of trying to pretend that life is just about the biological or just about the spiritual or just about the social. We need to recognize all of these, and we need to recognize that they're constantly in interaction with one another. That's my first major point. Secondly, I want to suggest to you that life involves a range of experiences and a range of emotions. And I want to put it to you that for all of us, constant happiness or joy is not the norm for life. Even though the media, the bold and the beautiful at rest, will try to convince us that the norm for life is constant happiness, put it to you, that's not true. For us as human beings, it's not the norm to constantly be happy. And part of the experience of life for all of us are elements of depression. Now, what does depression mean? Well, I think it can mean three things. It can be an ordinary life experience, waking up one day and feeling a bit miserable because I have to go to work, or because I have a relationship that's strained, or I've got to pay my tax today, or whatever it is. An ordinary life experience. And I'm sure none of us go through life without episodes of depression. It may be a clinical phenomenon, a psychiatric disorder of the kind that Dr. Lund and Dr. de Brieve have spoken about. Or it might represent what the literature philosophers call an existential crisis, reaching the point of wondering, what's the meaning of my life? I've been in this job, I've been married, I've found a sense of purpose, and suddenly I hit 50 and none of those things seem to enable me to see any point in my life any longer. Now, I want to suggest to you we mustn't confuse these three things. There are two risks. The first is the risk of seeing all depression as clinical, and it's not. The second is missing depressions that are clinical, where there are